down here.
I can't go back.
Look, if something saved you from that fall, it didn't do it so you could die here instead. You're coming with me. Whatever it is, we can get it out of here.
I'm telling you, it's trying to warn us. That wave is coming.
Oh, it's going to be coming right now. If we don't move, now come on!
I'm Stephanie Williams, and welcome to Prime Video Recaps. Today, I'm taking you deep into Prime Video's chilling sci-fi thriller, The Rig. The Rig tells the story of the Kinloch Bravo oil rig crew off the Scottish coast, where drilling operations awaken something ancient and terrifying from its depths. What begins as strange weather evolves into a battle for survival that forces the crew to question their role in humanity's impact on Earth. Episode 1 begins on the Kinloch Bravo oil rig in the middle of the ocean. The crew is engaged in light-hearted banter just before Magnus, the rig's supervisor, delivers bad news. A power failure has delayed the helicopters meant to relieve the current shift, leaving the team stranded. Soon after, alarms sound as the crew is forced to respond to a critical issue. A malfunction causes concern with Charlie Station, another nearby rig, experiencing similar problems. Magnus and a representative for the Pictor Energy Company named Rose and Alwyn, a deck foreman, decide to shut down the drills as a precaution. However, Rose is frustrated by the decision. She argues the protocols would have sufficed. Magnus defends his choice, emphasizing the need to prioritize lives. Soon after, a mysterious fog rolls in, making the situation worse. No one knows what it is or why it's happening. Fulmore, the communications officer, and Baz, a young drill hand, are sent up to the communication tower to see if the problem can be resolved manually. While climbing to the top, a seagull flies at Baz and knocks him unsteady on the ladder. Upon reaching the top, Baz pisses Fulmore off, causing Fulmore to head back down without him. Before Baz heads down, he is distracted by something he can sense but can't see. He then notices what appears to be the same seagull with him on the platform, and it appears to be dying. Soon after, Baz falls from the communication tower, but we don't see how or why he falls. And the other crew members assume that he fell because his harness is detached. Fulmore is questioned about why he left Baz behind, since Fulmore has seniority and should know better. As a safety precaution, 2 people are supposed to go up and 2 people are supposed to come down. Although Baz is somehow still alive, his injuries are severe, requiring urgent evacuation to the mainland for medical treatment. However, with helicopters delayed, tensions rise. Baz is treated in the infirmary by the rig's medic, Kat. Fulmore shares with Rose that he feels guilty about what happened to Baz. She comforts him and the 2 share a kiss. Their relationship is more than just simply being co-workers. Hutton, a volatile crew member, becomes visibly upset and storms outside to vent his anger. Back in the control room, Rose discovers an alarming issue. While Kinloch Bravo's drills have been shut down, the pipeline feeding from neighboring rigs has also stopped, an unexpected and widespread failure affecting the entire field. Hutton, who is angered by the perceived inaction, confronts Magnus and demands answers. Frustrated, he rifles through the office documents, uncovering confidential information. Using this, Hutton rallies the crew at the helipad, accusing management of deception and neglecting Baz's welfare. Under pressure, Magnus admits the truth. Pictor Energy, the company overseeing the operation, plans to shut down the entire oil field, leaving the crew unemployed. As tensions escalate, an unusual phenomenon occurs. What appears to be snow begins to fall, but it's revealed to be ash. During the eerie atmosphere, Baz unexpectedly regains consciousness and utters a chilling warning. It's too late, it's already started. It seems the fog has brought on additional trouble as ash begins to fall. The crew realizes the helicopters will not be returning anytime soon. Left in isolation, they must determine the cause of the tremors and navigate the strange, worsening conditions. Episode 2 opens with Baz regaining consciousness in the med bay. Though he attempts humor, his bloodshot eyes and unsettling demeanor hint at something sinister. When Rose questions Baz about his presence on the helipad, Baz admits to seeing something in the fog and hearing voices, ominously declaring that it's coming. When pressed, he cryptically identifies it as a wave. Tensions among the crew escalates as they grapple with the announcement of the rig's decommissioning. Magnus faces criticism for withholding this information, particularly from Dunlin, who is a well-respected crew boss. The shift toward renewable energy and rising costs have made their future uncertain, compounding the crew's frustrations. A blinking light is spotted below the rig, adding to the crew's woes. Lek, the rig mechanic, identifies it as Morse code and quickly deciphers it, revealing a call for assistance. Magnus orders a standby vessel into a holding position and assigns Lek to investigate further. Lek's backstory comes to life, revealing he survived a serious accident 2 years ago, which explains his shaky hands and difficulties with equipment. Meanwhile, Hutton remains confined to avoid sparking further unrest among the crew. Rose collects a sample of the mysterious ash, while Fulmore warns of their limited time to decipher the Morse code before daylight renders communication impossible. Kat reports Baz has gone missing. He's later found in the ops deck, eerily drawing circles on the window. When Alwyn confronts him, Baz cryptically says something is in the light before fleeing into the fog. Lek, troubled in seeking solace, takes alcohol from the med bay and retreats to the shower, where he experiences a horrific reaction. His tattoos begin to bleed, and he cries out in pain. Though his cries are initially ignored, Heather later informs Magnus that Lek has died. The crew discovers that any inorganic materials in or on bodies, such as tattoos and fillings, are being rejected, likely triggered by the ash, which seems to have a biological component. As strange lights are observed outside, Alwyn and Fulmore investigate. At the same time, Hutton escapes confinement, activating the deck's lights and calling for the SBV. The ash momentarily ceases falling, but Hutton's actions prompt an emergency response. Magnus and Dunlin arrive to halt the SBV's approach, warning the crew to return to the accommodation deck. Alwyn recalls Baz's warning and ventures into the lower deck where he finds Baz. In a terrifying turn, Baz grabs Alwyn, who begins spewing water from his mouth before collapsing. Though Magnus and Dunlin attempt to resuscitate him, Alwyn succumbs, appearing to have drowned without explanation. Rose tests the ash in the lab and discovers it reacts with blood, indicating the parasitic nature. Injuries, even minor ones, could prove fatal, a grim revelation given Fulmore's earlier hand injury, which exposed him to the ash. The episode concludes with a haunting scene. Baz sits alone, staring at the water as the mysterious fog and its deadly implications loom over the crew. Episode 3 opens with Baz spiraling out of control, pleading with the mysterious force influencing him and questioning its purpose. Tensions remain high among the crew. Rose, determined to use the crisis as an opportunity to reshape the industry for the better, focuses on the situation's corporate and scientific aspects. She proposes obtaining blood samples from everyone to determine whether the reactive agent is affecting them. Now back with the group, Hutton continues to express his frustrations with management, questioning how they'll return home. However, before the situation escalates, the fog abruptly lifts, revealing Charlie Station blanketed in thick, choking black smoke. Heather suggests sending lifeboats to help, but Hutton dismisses the idea as pointless. Meanwhile, Fulmore spots Baz in the med bay. Baz confesses his remorse over Alwyn's death and cryptically states that some unknown entity needs him and Fulmore. Baz then flees when Rose arrives. Rose notices Fulmore's injured hand and insists he comes to the lab. Baz continues to roam the rig freely. Magnus gathers the crew to deliver a briefing. With the standby vessel gone, their only way back is by helicopter, but no arrival time is known. He organizes the team to wash down the rig and remove the ash, while others are assigned to search the rig for Baz, including the less monitored production module. As Baz roams the rig, he drops a blood sample into the water, which interacts with the oil in the tanks, triggering the growth of plant matter. When Hutton and others discover this, a sudden vibration shakes the entire rig, leading to widespread power outages. Rose's research reveals that the ash dates back 300 million years and links it to the Premierian era. She speculates that the oil they've been drilling is connected to this era of mass extinction, known as the Great Dying, which wiped out most across ocean and land species. Massive volcanic eruptions and atmospheric changes primarily drove this event. Heather finds Baz, who cryptically declares that something is dying and describes the situation as both a beginning and an end. He is joined by Garo, who is also an infected crew member and adamant about protecting the rig. As chaos unfolds, Rose restores power, but another issue emerges. The ignition system is unresponsive. With chemicals leaking into the air, the only viable solution involves a risky maneuver, using a crane to approach the stack and manually fire a flame into it, all while avoiding potential explosions. Fulmer volunteers for the dangerous task, seeking to prove himself to the crew. Despite the high stakes, he successfully fires the flare, but is caught in the resulting blast. Although his suit's heat resistance protects him from the worst of the flames, he suffers severe burns and is left in critical condition. The episode concludes with the crew grappling with their precarious situation and the mounting implications of the ancient forces. Episode 4 delves into Magnus's past, revealing the lingering guilt he carries from the death of his 8-year-old son, who was hit by a car while Magnus was stuck working past his rotation. This tragedy has haunted Magnus, shaping his actions and his leadership style. Meanwhile, Baz and Garo work together to shut down the rig's pipeline, realizing they must go directly to the source to succeed. Fulmer, recovering from his burns, wakes to find Rose at his bedside. Rose reveals that she is there because she wants to be, but insists he rests while she returns to work. Heather, a crew member, later shares her belief with Rose that Baz is not inherently aggressive, suggesting Alwyn's death was an accident driven by a primal fight or flight response. Rose theorizes that the ash is linked to the ancient organism, the ancestor, potentially the oldest life form on Earth. This discovery could have profound implications for their understanding of the rig situation. As this unfolds, Fulmore overhears Kat confiding in Rose and Heather that she is pregnant. Despite his injuries, Fulmore dresses and leaves, heading to the radio room when the signal briefly returns. Instead of contacting the beach, Fulmore investigates circle communication, a mysterious form of communication that seems related to the circles on the ocean floor and elsewhere on the rig. He seeks to understand their significance and potential connection to the rig situation. Despite the mounting pressure, the crew bravely deploys the Bullseye submersible to the ocean floor. There, they discover strange circular symbols resembling those left by infected individuals. These symbols appear to mark thermal vents. As the crew attempts to sabotage Baz's efforts to manipulate the wellhead, Baz realizes he needs Fulmore's help to complete his plan. Rose stumbles upon classified information about a project, a secret initiative requiring clearance above her own, despite holding the highest level security access. This discovery is cut short as the signal vanishes and the fog returns, enveloping the rig once more. Rose notices Fulmore's sketches of the circles and keeps them secret, later confronting him in private. Fulmore reveals that his wounds are healing unusually fast and that he's experiencing hallucinations, hearing Baz's voice in his mind. Rose reassures him they will find a solution, but chooses to not inform anyone about his condition, risking the rig's safety. The crew grows increasingly concerned that the fog has reached the mainland, which is exacerbated by Kat's earlier call to her wife Cassie, which was cut off as the fog descended. During the rising tension and arguments, Magnus loses control and Rose steps in to calm the crew, though she still withholds Fulmore's condition from them. Returning to her cabin, she finds Fulmore gone, leaving a note that reads, "It's not safe for me to be around you." Kat follows Fulmore as he heads toward Baz's location. She discovers a part of the rig transformed into a lush, otherworldly environment filled with plant life and swirling spores. Despite the obvious dangers, Kat ventures inside without protective gear and she encounters swirling spores. As she inspects them further, the spores gather near her stomach as though the spores sense something about her. Rose happens upon the exchange. She then manages to convince Kat to leave as they have no idea if the spores are dangerous or not. As the episode concludes, lights appear in the distance, suggesting a ship is approaching. Alarms blare across the rig as the crew, united in their goal, scramble to prepare for evacuation with the ominous fog still hanging over them. Episode 5 kicks off with the lights in the water revealed to be from a lifeboat sent from the Kinloch Charlie. The crew brings the passengers aboard rather than abandoning them. Among those arriving are David Cope, a Pictor Research and Expansion representative, and Harris, a crew member from the Charlie whom Easter, the Red Crane driver, knows. When Rose questions Coke about the research team's purpose, Coke dryly responds with research. After being briefed on the rig situation, Coke reveals a startling fact. Rose is in charge of the decommissioning program, a role she had not disclosed to the crew. While in the med bay, Harish notes that Coke sent some team members, including their OIM, back to the beach before the fog and subsequent events. Coke also orchestrated an operation to send an experimental bioweapon into the water, which could have triggered the current crisis. Rose grows suspicious of Coke's motives, especially as she struggles to understand how everything connects. However, when Magnus arrives, Rose criticizes Coke for withholding information despite her own secrecy regarding Fulmore and her role in the decommissioning. Magnus advises Rose to focus on her research while he manages Coke and the new arrivals. As Heather investigates, she discovers Coke's identity doesn't match official records, suggesting he is not who he claims to be. Collaborating with Harris and Easter, Heather finds evidence that Coke has encountered the organism before. Rose deciphers the significance of the mysterious rings, likening them to tree rings that measure time. The intervals between the rings align with the 5 major mass extinction events in Earth's history. Alarmingly, the final ring remains incomplete, and it appears Bass and the infected are working to trigger another extinction. Undermining Magnus, Coke organizes a team to access the production module. Claiming he will assist from the control room, Coke instructs the volunteers, including Hutton and Murch, the head cook, to enter the module and activate the fire suppression system to release the gas from CO2 canisters. Coke promises to hold the doors open remotely, but Dunlin questions his intentions. Despite their reservations, the team proceeds. Inside, things quickly spiral out of control. Garrow collapses and dies, spewing blood onto Hutton's unprotected hands. Dunlin is shocked at Garrow's death as Coke tells them the CO2 would only render him, Fulmore, and Bass unconscious instead of killing them. As Hutton and Murch flee, Dunlin is left behind with little oxygen in his tank. Coke closes the doors on him. Dunlin removes his mask to call for help, but begins choking on toxins, running low on oxygen despite replacing his mask. Fulmore and Bass seem only to faint. Rose refuses to let Coke's actions stand and finds an alternate route to reach the pump room. She finds Fulmore and removes her mask to share oxygen with him. When she collapses, an unexplainable reaction occurs between her touch and the ground, reviving Fulmore. Later, Magnus and Hutton put aside their differences, agreeing to work together to confront Coke. As they plan their next steps, Rose decides not to attempt saving Dunlin the same way she revived Fulmore, deeming it useless. With the fire doors open, the survivors regroup with Magnus. As the episode concludes with the seabed visible, the final ring complete, signaling that a mass extinction event is imminent. Episode 6, the season finale, begins with a flashback to Kinloch Charlie 2 days earlier. Coke oversees rising pressure levels and recklessly insists on continuing their tests, tampering with the mysterious circle on the seabed. This triggers a massive explosion, sending black smoke billowing from Charlie Station. Back in the present, Harris informs Magnus about these events, revealing that after the explosion, they were ordered to erase all data. Coke left behind several crew members, taking a lifeboat with 20 empty seats as he fled to the Kinloch Bravo. Coke defends his ruthless decision to Magnus, asserting that he prioritizes eliminating infected individuals at all costs. Meanwhile, Fulmore, now seemingly recovered, raises questions about the infection's nature. Rose asks Fulmore to attempt communication with Baz. To their surprise, Fulmore demonstrates control over the plant spores in a petri dish, gaining a vision of Baz and the ancestors' plan to trigger a Saraga slide, a catastrophic tsunami capable of killing hundreds of thousands. Rose realizes that Baz, who has been urging them to listen the entire time, may hold the key to stopping the disaster. The group agrees to confront Baz together despite Coke's objections. While they descend to Baz's location, Coke reveals to Harris that Pictor has arranged for helicopters to extract him and a select few. Coke confesses that the company plans to cover up the organism's existence by destroying it at its source now that it poses a threat to humanity. Baz becomes the focal point of the group's communication efforts. Harris broadcasts Coke's admission about the evacuation, fueling the growing chaos and revealing the helicopter's imminent arrival to the rest of the crew. The rig is soon rocked by violent tremors, intensifying the urgency of the situation. Coke makes his way to the roof to await extraction while Rose devises a bold plan to stop the disaster. Rather than attempting to block the organism, she will release it. Rose activates the blue spores by touching the pipe. The spores form a swirling, glowing circle that looks like a portal, possibly symbolizing connection. Baz realizes the interconnected nature of the organism and humanity. He decides to stay behind and sacrifice himself to halt the impending destruction. He imparts a final message to Magnus, urging him to cherish the value of life. As the colossal wave approaches, the crew scrambles onto the last helicopter. The helicopter departs, and when the crew asks where they are headed, Coke cryptically responds that they are heading elsewhere instead of to the beach. In the finale's final scene, massive tremors strike the mainland, and Kat's wife, Cassie, witnesses an enormous shadow looming on the horizon. And that does it for this episode of Prime Video Recaps. You can watch The Rig Seasons 1 and 2 only on Prime Video. I've been your host, Stephanie Williams. Thank you for watching.